David Eickholt from Hawkeye Insider, and Ryan Burns, who, by the way, Ryan's one of my favorite coworkers. I know, we cover rival teams, but we always get along really well in person. It's kind of funny watching my message board grade Ryan's takes and vice versa. So, but I know you're making it a day trip on Saturday, but I appreciate you taking some time. I got out of my Micah Parsons jersey and just put on some green just for you, but it's all good.
Yeah, how lucky for me. Yeah, the soon-to-be defensive player of the year in the NFL gets traded by your guy, Jerry Jones, for a bucket of balls. And, yeah, I'm not bitter. While we're still waiting for J.J. McCarthy's ankle, which was supposed to be a 2 to 4 week injury. Now we're almost on week 6. He's not going to be playing here on Thursday night. I thought he was a Michigan man, a man of integrity, or did Jim Harbaugh when he got all those NCAA violations and left that end with it? Now I'm just getting off track at this point. Appreciate you having me on.
It's okay. I had to try to bait you a little bit. I mean, I know it'd be obviously vice versa. That's one. Also, to why it's one of the things you guys always do when we all get together for Big Ten Media Days. That's like your first thing on your checklist when we all sit down. It's like get a Jack King Coke and try to rage bait David.
Yeah, and we try to get some bets on the record, but on a day and age where Chauncey Billups is now involved with the mafia, I don't know that we should do that today.
I'll tell you what, I think that story is going to blow up more too over the next few hours. So I'm kind of excited about that. But Ryan, I got to admit, I didn't think Minnesota was going to be great this year. I didn't think they would start off 5-2. Drake Lindsey strikes me as a really good. He has potential to be a really good Big Ten quarterback. But give me just your overview of Minnesota's season so far.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. One that is shown that Minnesota's been really good at home. They're 5-0. They got 3 Big Ten wins, all of which they trailed in the games. They trailed against 14 against Rutgers, came back. Trailed by 10 against Purdue, came back. Trailed early against Nebraska, came back. And then on the road, I don't know what to make of their road woes yet, considering they haven't played a road game when the sun has been up. They played at Cal, which not only are you going 2 time zones, it's a 4-hour flight. You kicked off at about 9:30 local time here in the Central Time Zone. And when the Gophers actually fell apart in that final 15, 20 minutes, it's after midnight. So how much of that is they just didn't play well on the road? How much of it is their body clocks? It's after midnight and they're trying to play a competitive game. I think when they played Ohio State, I kind of just take that game out of realistic possibilities because I think Ohio State is a wagon. But it's been a season where they have found ways. I don't think this is PJ Fleck's most talented team. I really don't. I think you look at last year's team, I think they had more talent potentially on it because you look at last year's team. I mean, they had 6 guys make 53-man rosters in the NFL. And that's something that doesn't happen every year at Minnesota. I even think about the matchup between these 2 teams coming up on Saturday. I don't think this is Kirk Ferentz's most talented team. I don't think it's Fleck's. I think that one of that 2019 matchup where it was just Minnesota comes in undefeated and the amount of just creatures for Iowa, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is going to be one that always stands out to me. But it's been a season that the Gophers came in with a 6.5 win total. They're on pace to likely end up around 7 wins. That's what I predicted for them, depending upon what happens this weekend. I get why the line for this game is over a touchdown for Iowa, but the Gophers have just found ways to win. And the question is, in Kinnick Stadium, which has largely been a house of horrors for PJ Fleck or name your XYZ Gopher coach, Glenn Mason, Jerry Kill. I mean, it has been a house of horrors over the years. So very fascinating matchup to get into.
I'll tell you, I thought the line was going to be at about 5.5 to 6. I thought Iowa would be favored by more than a field goal, but a touchdown seemed like a little bit of a stretch to me. But I'll tell you, I think this game's kind of easy to read, and I really don't say that very often because I will say I don't think this is Kirk Ferentz's most talented team. Definitely not the most talented team I've covered. I would argue there was a lot more talent last year, despite some woes they had at the quarterback position. But I think you can make a legitimate case when it's all said and done. This is the second best offensive line that Kirk Ferentz has had. I think the 0-2 is the standard, the Brad Banks year, right? I think the year where Sean Green went bonkers. But you have 6 year, you have Logan Jones, James Dunker, who's continuing to rise through the ranks. I'll say this, and this is something I'm interested in when we talk about Iowa's rush offense versus Minnesota's rushing defense. Minnesota's rushing defense has been pretty good for the most part. Obviously, had a slip up against Purdue. I don't know what to make of them because I looked back at the rush offense that they've played against. They're not exactly lethal, but I'm not going to sit here and penalize a team for doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, as the guy who's watched every snap probably multiple times this season, what do you think about Minnesota's run defense?
I will just say their defense overall, I don't know what to make of. And I know that's not great insight from the guy who's supposed to know him better than 99.9% of people, but they've been so Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they have been, whether it's the run defense, you go back to the Rutgers game, Rutgers tailback. I mean, he put up 150 yards. If I ever have to cover Devin Mockabee ever again against the Golden Gophers, I mean, he just turns into the reincarnation of Mike Allstott, and he did for, again, the third straight year. I mean, Purdue ran for over 250 yards in Huntington Bank Stadium. Purdue, who came in averaging something like 70 rushing yards a game. Devin Mockabee I think he had only gone over 59 rushing yards in one game, yet they just ran the ball at will. And then 6 days later on a Friday night on Fox that 2.6 million people watched, Emmett Johnson did okay, but he didn't do what he was supposed to do. So that's the question going into this game is, Iowa's offensive line. I think they are the true X factor in this game. I know Pro Football Focus isn't the end-all be-all, certainly for grades, but you look at the top 5 graded players for Iowa's offense, that would be left tackle through right tackle. And then you put on the tape, I will stand by it, that no one runs stretch zone like the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I saw that with my own 2 eyes in the second half of last year's game. But if the Gophers' defensive line does not play with physicality and they allow these offensive linemen to climb to the second level, and then it's just the Gopher safeties one-on-one with whether it's Gronowski or whether it's an Iowa tailback, I don't think that's going to end well for Minnesota. So if you don't play with physicality in this game, I mean, Minnesota is just going to have a tough time to do anything at Kinnick. So what do I make of the run defense? What do I make of the physicality? They brought it last week against Nebraska. I mean, we heard from both Gopher coordinators yesterday, and I think Minnesota's offensive coordinator said it best when he said something along the lines of, we challenged our guys to be physical for Nebraska. Well, guess what? Iowa's next. And if you don't bring the physicality, they will out-physical you. We shouldn't have to tell them to be physical in this game. Everybody knows that you can throw out the records to an extent with these two teams. They're going to play each other well. But if Iowa's offensive line wins up front, this is going to be a very tough day for Minnesota.
Yeah, it's kind of my read on it too. And this is the first time Iowa's been healthy in the running back room since the first snap of the season, because Kamari Moulton got hurt on the first series and he missed about 3 or 4 games. But Iowa's getting Jazzy and Patterson back. They're getting TJ Washington back, who I don't think is going to be a big factor. It'll probably be more likely to be Nathan McNeil or Xavier Williams outside of Kamari Moulton. But very interesting comments, I think, from Fleck. I was kind of reading into what he thought about Gronowski. I saw Minnesota's kind of response to that, but I'm curious what your take is on Gronowski, because I'll say this. I know his passing offense hasn't been great. I don't think Iowa's receivers have helped. I think Iowa's had basically 0 receiving presence in the tight end room this year, whether it be to injuries and kind of lacking the household name. But I will say I do think Gronowski's knee injury is impacting his throws a lot more than he's trying to let us on to be. But it seemed like PJ Fleck had a lot of really interesting things to say about Gronowski, and I did not get the chance to read what the defensive coordinator had to say. So what's your kind of read from this coaching staff about Gronowski? Because you've watched Iowa long enough. Like, this is probably the most mobile quarterback Iowa's had since Brad Banks. Like, CJ Beathard could escape, but Gronowski can make some really good things happen on the ground.
How dare you besmirch Ricky Stanzi in my presence like that? But I think for Gronowski, it's just taking away his legs. And I asked the defensive coordinator, Danny Collins, about that. Is I haven't watched as much Iowa football as you, or neither your listeners. I can just look at the stats and tell you, I mean, when you have against Power 4 competition, no passing touchdowns and 5 picks, like that's a slippery slope. Now, I know it's not just Gronowski. I know it's not just the banged up receiving core. I know the tight end one, he's out. It's not just one thing. You got to throw in Tim Lester there too. But I wonder how much of it is for Gronowski that he just never got back to 100% with his shoulder from the offseason surgery. I still, you know better than I do about the knee injury where Kirk Ferentz came out after the game and was talking about he couldn't decelerate. I mean, that scares the absolute pants off of me. But with Gronowski, they just know they need to take away his legs. I mean, Mark Gronowski himself has more rushing touchdowns than the entire Gopher football offense. I know it. You know it. Gopher coaches know it. And he is an absolute lethal player in the red zone. I mean, to me, I compare Mark Gronowski, and I have all week. I don't know how much your listeners will know of this comparison, but he reminds me of a Gopher quarterback I covered for quite a few years, and Mitch Leidner, who was inconsistent with his arm, but really good in terms of finding a way to get into the end zone. I know Gronowski's got a rushing touchdown in every game this season. He did that so well in Brookings, but I believe the plan is going to be, and it's going to be easier said than done, because I'm sure Tim Lester knows it as well, try to contain Mark Gronowski in the pocket. If he turns into, I mean, I've seen Alex Padilla turn into Brad Banks in Kinnick Stadium against the Gophers, because seemingly every Iowa quarterback outside of the 2023 matchup where the Gophers stole it 12-10, I mean, they just play really well against the Gophers. That's just the way it happens, especially in Kinnick. So if Gronowski beats you with his arm, which I'll be the first to tell you, he's very liable to do. We just haven't seen it against a Power 4 competition this year. If he does that, so be it. That's how you live and die. But if you allow him to beat you with his legs, specifically in the red zone on an RPO or a counter, shame on you. So take away Mark Gronowski's legs, and you're going to have a shot on Saturday afternoon.
I like how you brought that up. And it's funny, too, when you look at Gronowski's picks, because I'm not going to lie to you, Ryan. I've maybe pinned 2 of them on him because the others, like the pick against Iowa State, the receiver slipped. And now, look, I'm not saying Weejic catches the ball, but like he's going to be there. It's a really difficult pick to make. So I'm not going to I'm not going to blame that one on him. The one last week that started off the game against Penn State, like it hit Jacob Gill right in the hands and just popped up.
That.
Like I'm not getting pinned it on. I'm not getting pinned it on. So like there was one against Wisconsin where he threw in a double coverage downfield. They went for a kill shot. I'll throw that one on him. But like, so he is an interesting case. But again, I also think that there's maybe some lack of talent still on the outside. Now Reese Vanderzee's back. He trusts Reese Vanderzee, but at the same time, Iowa ran the ball 2 times.
Well, that's the beauty of why like Pro Football Focus in this aspect is so helpful, because they have like big time throws and turnover worthy plays, and he's got only 4 turnover worthy plays in 7 games. To your point, it's not just on him. He's had some bad luck with his pass catching core, but that's where you could be able to answer this better than me. And the thing that really stood out to me too was there isn't a quarterback in the Big Ten that has a lower ADOT being average depth of target than Mark Gronowski. It's only at 6.4 yards. So essentially everything is close to the line of scrimmage. Now, I don't know if that's just the way Lester is designing things, if it's the injuries at tight end, at wide receiver, but for a guy who holds the ball quite a bit, I think he is top 5 in at least holding the ball among all Big Ten quarterbacks. To have the lowest ADOT of Big Ten starting quarterbacks is also very interesting to me.
It strikes me as a little bit Miami Dolphins-esque offense because that's all Hills runs down there.
I was about to say, just chucking it to Devon Achane, and was the corpse of Darren Waller still running around out there for the Miami Dolphins? Yeah, who knows?
Tell you what, that was a fantasy steal for me in my auction draft. Darren Waller's got me a lot of for $1 too. It was fantastic. So something that's really struck me interesting about this Iowa team, and then I want the Minnesota side of things. Like I thought Iowa's special teams was going to be top 3 in the country. So like I'm not gonna lie, I think we shortchanged previewing it because we took it for granted. Now it's LeVar Woods, one of the best in the country. Obviously, Drew Stevens is now the record holder for field goals for Iowa. Reese Dakins in the sophomore year. Caden Weejian's probably been the only consistent factor, but he also played horrible against Iowa State. Iowa's special teams has been liable this year. I mean, you saw it firsthand at the 66-yard field goal attempt last week that was returned for a touchdown that sucked all the air out of Kinnick Stadium. How do you feel about the special teams in this matchup with Minnesota? Because we have seen it now. Again, we're not going to go back to 2 years ago. I know we brought that up on the podcast before we started filming. But how's Minnesota's special teams this year? How are they like winning between the margins? Because there are times where, you know, again, Iowa's earned the wins against Minnesota, but like Minnesota has shot themselves in the foot more than a few times in this series.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, it was an invalid signal, but we'll leave it at that. Hopefully we don't have to deal with any of that tomfoolery or skullduggery on Saturday afternoon.
It's only going to be brought up about 7-8 times in the broadcast. We all know it. We
I'm
both
sure.
know it.
I'm sure it'll just be. I'm tired of talking about it. So are you. It's 2 years ago. Let it live. But I think their special teams has been about what I expect, which is pretty mediocre, largely. They have Coy Parrish in the return game, but I'll remind your listeners, the Gophers haven't had a return touchdown since 2018. I mean, there are now first graders running around that weren't even alive the last time the Gophers had a return touchdown. And I have been loathing it, lamenting it. I brought it up to the head coach. I can assure you PJ Fleck knows my thoughts and feelings, nor should he care about them. Their punter, Tom Weston, is their new Australian punter. He has been better than their punter last year, Mark Crawford, but he didn't have a great week against Nebraska. Their place kicker, Brady Denneberg, he finally made a 40-plus yard field goal. Why is that important? Because he had missed the previous 5 from 40-plus, and that had been a big issue for him going back to his days at Syracuse. I'm glad you brought up it's Wheatgen is how you say it, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, he scares me because I have seen return men in the past. I saw it 2 years ago. I've seen it so many times between Minnesota and Iowa that you allow Iowa to Iowa you, and part of that is flipping field position and just getting killed in field position. And Wheatgen can absolutely do that. I mean, he's one of the best return men in the Big Ten, if not the best, and he's fearless. Again, I don't know how Iowa continues to find these 5'7", 5'8" speedy guys that just will run through a brick wall for the black and gold. But Wheatgen is a lethal punt and kick return, man. I expect Minnesota to kick everything out through the back of the end zone and make Gronowski start at the 25 and go 50 yards to be able to get points. But it's Tom Weston, Minnesota's punter, versus Wheatgen. I mean, you want to be able to have 46-yard punts between the numbers and the sidelines. That would be ideal. But if you do hit it 55 and you give him a sliver, I'm a little worried that he can leak out. I know he's very, very good. I would also say you mentioned the 66-yard field goal last week. I mean, I don't know what Kirk Ferentz is doing, but you're asking for that to be blocked at that point because you have to have a lower trajectory to get some power behind it. I've seen PJ Fleck pull stuff like that, like in 2021 in Kinnick, when they sent out Dragan Kesage for a 50-plus yard field goal at the end of the first half, and that didn't go well. Again, I think Fleck and Ferentz want to do the same thing, and that is just ball control you to death, field position you to death. It's the ball is the program that neither one of them wants to turn the ball over. I mean, it is going to be fascinating, but Wheatgen scares me immensely in this one.
So before we get to the final keys in your prediction, I want to hit you with this because, I mentioned Drake Lindsay at the start of the podcast and what he's been able to do. Numbers are solid, but I know you don't know the team between the home and the road record, and you're still kind of wary about how they are on the road. How do you think he's going to respond to Kinnick? Because I do think this is going to be a pretty rowdy Kinnick crowd. I mean, I do think this is going to play a part in it. This is the only reason why I bring it up. I do think what happened 2 years ago is going to amp up the energy. I also see the energy being amped up because if Iowa wins, they go into their second bye week. They're 6-2. Then they host Oregon, and then that's going to be the kind of the threshold of, okay, could it be a special season? Or is it going to be, hey, look, Iowa's probably going to go 8-4 again, make the Citrus Bowl, and then I get to go pack my bags for Florida for the bowl game.
I'm laughing at that. If that's what you're looking for, I'm just hoping that I don't end up in Detroit. You know how many Christmases I've spent in Detroit in my life?
I don't think
that
I'd
is
wish
among
that
the
on
most
my worst
depressing
enemy.
things you can do as a sports writer. And I'm not asking anyone to feel bad for me. You and I have a career that many people would kill for, and we're very grateful for it. But I'm going to be fascinated to kind of see with Drake. I mean, Drake is what I thought Ethan Kaliakmanis was going to be. I think Drake has the ability to make any throw on the field, and I think you've seen with Ethan Kaliakmanis. I mean, I even remember those first couple of quarters out there in Piscataway against Iowa. I mean, when he's on, he's on. Now, when I've talked about for a long time with Ethan, even going back to his Minnesota days, first half Ethan versus second half Ethan are very different quarterbacks. And getting pressure on Ethan Kaliakmanis, and many things will go well for you then. With Drake, the thing that separates him from Ethan is his mental processing. Minnesota does a ton of motion to give him as much opportunities to read the defensive man versus zone, They allow him the ability to get into run checks at the line of scrimmage. Like, he is the one, him and the offensive coordinator, Greg Harbaugh, of driving this thing. And he's only going to be in his 8th career start. Now, this will be one of the most difficult environments he's played in his life. Minnesota did play against Ohio State under the lights for their homecoming. So he has been in a type of environment like this before. But I mean, Kinnick is its own entity. I mean, I asked PJ Fleck earlier this week, where does Kinnick rank for you? And he said, I know everybody says their home place, but he goes, back to my days as a player, Kinnick is the most difficult stadium to play in his mind. And I know he's got a ton of respect for Kirk Ferentz. And he called him, to me, one of the best college football coaches in his lifetime. I was just in his office the other day, saw the letter from Kirk Ferentz talking about PJ. He's got it framed on the wall. I mean, there is a ton of respect between these coaching staffs. You've got Tim Lester, the Iowa offensive coordinator. Well, his protege, Greg Harbaugh, now calls the Minnesota offense because they work together at Western Michigan. I know that Harbaugh loves going against Phil Parker because he's one of the best in the profession. I mean, there's a lot of respect here, but I don't think that the crowd is necessarily going to flummox Drake Lindsay. I think it's going to mess with the offensive line. It's an offensive line for Minnesota that I have lamented. I have talked about. They've been maddeningly inconsistent. That goes from physicality to their play. We've seen 4 different offensive line combinations the last 4 weeks from Minnesota. So that's something to watch, see if they change up anything. But I don't worry about Drake. I worry about, can Minnesota's pass catchers get open against some very sticky and grabby Iowa defensive backs, and knowing that you're not going to get a call in Kinnick. I'm not asking anybody to play the world's saddest song and the world's smallest violin for the Gophers. It's just that's the way Iowa plays every year. And if it's not a flag, it's not a flag. But Drake's going to need somebody to get open. I believe he can get them the ball, but these Gopher pass catchers have to win against what I think is the strength of the Iowa defense is their secondary. They obviously got the reigning Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week there at safety. I think TJ Hall is really good. Zach Lutmer's done a really good job filling in for Sebastian Castro. Like, it's a good secondary. But I'll ask you this. I mean, my read on it is I think Phil Parker knows that he doesn't have the horses in the front 7 like he normally does. Like, this isn't 2018 Iowa where it's AJ Epinesa, Chauncey Golston, Anthony Nelson. I remember Anthony Nelson going into TCF Bank Stadium, and he actually got Minnesota's right tackle benched because he had 3 first-half sacks.
I was going to say, he had 3 sacks. Yeah, I remember that.
No one has more respect for what Iowa continues to do than me on the defensive line, but he seems to be blitzing more than he ever has. And when you blitz, you're going to put your secondary in conflict where, like against Indiana, all it takes is 1 missed tackle, and you get yourself in trouble. So if Minnesota can actually win on the outside, it's interesting. But if they can't, Drake's going to be under a lot of pressure.
I think it's more so on the linebackers than the secondary because, you lose – look, nobody's going to sit there and bash them. Like, you lose Jay Higgins, who was absolutely ridiculous. You lose Sebastian Castro. You lose Nick Jackson, who's only the second, most tackles in NCAA history. Now, look, he did get it in 6 years, but – a lot. You still got to give him credit for it. Secondary wise, I think you have a good read on it. Xavier Wampa is playing the best football of his career. That's the best game he's ever played in an Iowa uniform. I think he's helping his draft stock with that. Same with TJ Hall. TJ Hall, I didn't think was going to get drafted, but he's been. Don't let the no picks fool you. He's been pretty lights out. So I think that's a good read on everything. But let me hit you with this, and then I'll get you out of here. What's kind of your key? And you just kind of give away your keys, I guess. So what's your kind of final prediction? And give me one bold thing that you think happens in the game, because I have one in my mind, and it's very interesting because you already kind of brought it up. But I'll let you shoot.
Yeah, I think for Minnesota's offense, the key is to not play scared against Phil Parker. If you go down swinging, you go down swinging. I think about what Jeff Brom always did. Now, he had some great receivers. I know that if Hawkeye fans hear the name David Bell, it's going to be too soon considering what he always seemed to do to them over the years. And Minnesota doesn't have that. They don't have an alpha at receiver like they have in previous years with guys like Rashad Bateman, Tyler Johnson, Daniel Jackson. It's very much a by committee approach, and I'm very curious to see how that translates. I would also say I'm very curious to see what the take give does in this game, because Minnesota only has 1 giveaway as an offense in 4 Big Ten games. That's tied for the best in the Big Ten with Ohio State. I'm also curious what happens in the second half of this game. Why do I say that? Because in Minnesota's 3 Big Ten wins, they have outscored their opponent by 38 points. They have 48 points for, 10 points against. And they've definitely been a second half team, a team of adjustments. And then defensively, I talked about it. I mean, if Gronowski beats you with his legs, shame on you. Now, Tim Lester and Mark Gronowski are very good. I think Mark Gronowski is a winner. I think a lot of people in the Iowa media and the Iowa fan base agree with me. I mean, I saw Mitch Leidner do it forever. He just knows how to win football games, and there's a big skill aspect of that. I just think it comes down to the turnover margin and physicality. I believe Minnesota will play physical in Kinnick. I just don't know that I have enough trust in Minnesota's ability to tackle. They have missed double-digit tackles as a defense in 5 consecutive games. And the way I think this will go, I think Tim Lester and this offense are going to put the Gopher secondary in conflict, and there's going to be a lot of tackles in space. And if you don't make it to make it 2nd and 2, that 8-yard gain is going to be 58. So I think ultimately the Iowa offensive line is what puts me over the edge, just because of how well they're playing together. I think Iowa wins this game somewhere around like 23-16. But if this thing gets to the second half and Gronowski he's had some fumble issues at times. We've talked about the interceptions against Power 4 opponents. Now they're not necessarily on him. But if the Gophers can go +2 in the take-give, I mean, that is going to be the biggest thing for me. Whoever wins the take-give is going to win this game. Now, if it's even, then yeah, Iowa can absolutely get away with this thing. The Gophers need multiple takeaways in this game if they're going to steal one in Kinnick.
Yeah, I think that's a good read. I think I put 24-16 or 24-17 in my final thing. I think Weech houses one. I really do. I was kind of back and forth on it, but after you told me a little bit more about some of the issues they've had, like if it's a low punt, like he's gonna take it all the way. I mean, that's what Iowa fans saw against Troy last year when, Devontae Ross, who was basically a nightmare for Iowa in that Troy game before he went to Penn State, scored 3 touchdowns and did not get a hand on him. Iowa got no hands on him on any of the touchdowns. And Kirk even talked about how he doesn't think he's ever seen that in like 27 years as being a head coach. It's never happened. So I'm with you. I think Iowa's offensive line is probably a top 3 in the country. I think they will be a finalist for the Joe Moore Award just based on everything I've seen. But you're right. I mean, if they force Mark into a couple bad situations and Iowa can't make them, if they slow down that Iowa run game, it's going to be fun. But I do think there's always some weird crap that happens when these two teams play, whatever it may be. So, hey, Ryan, I appreciate you. I wasn't trying to butter you up too much. I enjoy collabing with you, and we'll be sure to get in some of those bets next year before Big Ten season actually starts so we can keep track of that. How about it?
Who says no? Not me. Appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to make the trip down to Iowa. Hopefully I don't hit a couple of bucks down on the way, knowing that this game is going to take me out of the tree stand in some prime weather. I'm sure there'll be some Iowa fans heading out to get some ditch chickens too. I mean, 'tis the season. We're almost in November. But excited to see what it looks like in Kinnick as always. See you on Saturday.
All right, bud. I appreciate you.